Welcome everybody. Can you believe it's October and Halloween? And yesterday we had our Parkinson's walk in LA, and I got to wear my witch's hat, which I should have brought in here, which is always a hit. And we debuted our new T-shirt. So if you're interested in a T-shirt, I probably have a T-shirt sale in a few weeks. Just put something in the chat saying, I want a T-shirt now. If you have a walk coming up and you want to get them for a group, let me know and we can work it out. So I'm really excited today. We have my friend Bunny Dybnis, who will be speaking to us about what your options are when you can no longer live in your home as it is, whether you have to remodel or move out, whatever it may be, as Parkinson's progresses. And I'm not even going to read her. I don't know what I did with her bio. She can tell you a little bit about herself. But I've known Bunny for over 40 years. We shared a dinner together when we were both like 8 months pregnant, which is an interesting thing. Remember that, Bunny?
Yes, I do.
Yeah. So that's how far back we go. She has been working in elder care for as long as I've known her. And she is an expert on all things for seniors, for living situations, resources, whatever you can think of. So if you have any questions, put them in the chat, as I said, and welcome, Bunny. And it's all the screen is yours.
Great, thank you, and thanks, Sharon. Yeah, a little bit about me so you know the context of this. Professionally, I have been in the field of geriatric care management since '93, and I do that with a marriage family therapy background, and I am a trained mediator. So I'm used to working with a lot of families in all kinds of contexts of aging, from complex situations to simple situations to basically conflicts that when people want to avoid court and that kind of thing. So I work out of Los Angeles. So a lot of what I'm going to be talking about has to do with California laws. So there's some licensing issues that are different in some of your states. One of the models of board and care that I'm going to talk about, I know they don't have them in every state. And I know for a lot of you that your real estate is quite a bit less expensive than ours. You have some wonderful options that we simply don't have in the California area. Because of the nature of my profession, I know people all over the country, and I get calls from children that are all over the country, and I have colleagues. So I know a little bit about a lot. So I can probably guide you if you need specifics, and I'll talk more about that at the end, where you can find help with this. But no, some of this is based on, I truly, didn't realize you were from all over the place. So, but I will be mentioning that, and keep in mind that some of your options we envy where we are. We just don't have them. And again, some of the entitlement programs that we have, you'd probably envy where you are. So there you go. So let's start. I think I started looking at people move for lots of reasons. All of us moved. I looked and I sort of broke it down to while I lived with my parents, when I was single, when I was married and had children, and now that I'm widowed. And I've lived in 13 different houses, residences, and all of them were by choice. So I think a lot of us, we move when there's times of change. For me, I went away to college. I was single. I moved in with my husband. We had a growing family. After he died, I downsized. So all these reasons, they were all positive. For many people, they're forced to move. And this is the issues that I hopefully can help you avoid and plan ahead for some of these and understand what it takes. People get divorced, they lose their jobs, they have to relocate. Their parents pull them out of school in junior high school and they lose all their friends. They're in the Army. Some people adapt and some people don't. So it's in the only thing I can stress, I don't know how many are on you, but really understand you all have different issues, and we look at the context of those and look through it. And the biggest indicator, my background before I was working in aging, I worked with the end of life issues in bereavement, and I learned one thing, something that is we sort of go through something called parallel process. So how we responded before is how we're going to respond in the future, unless there's something very different. So somebody that's had to adapt because they got divorced and were forced to downsize and move out of their house they loved into a condo, and they did it beautifully. Pretty good assumption that if you have to move, you're going to be able to do that. On the other hand, other people don't take change very well at all. So know yourself. For me, because I've always moved from choice, I don't really know. I have a pretty good idea if I was forced to leave, and I certainly have that in my mind. So keep that in mind when I talk about it. Okay, let's move on. Okay, so there's lots and lots of reasons why people move. And let's talk about the good ones. First, to enhance their quality of life. A lot of people move, they start getting frailer, their neighbors start moving, their families aren't around anymore. They want to they want to reduce it's too hard keeping track of a big house. They want to lose, they want to be more social, all kinds of reasons that people look forward and they can't wait to move into a different environment. Then there's others, and I see this a lot. As people age, they move to be closer to relatives. They move across the country, maybe, or maybe in Los Angeles, with traffic, if you live 20 miles away, you might as well be out of the country. So you move to a different area to be with your children. Or it may be being next to friends, or all those kind of things. And again, people get overwhelmed by taking this. People get older and frailer, or your illness gets worse. It gets harder and harder to keep and maintain a household. So people will move because of that. And it's such a relief. Not for me, I was living in a 2-story house, and it was such a relief not to have to run up and down the stairs all the time. And my location was it was in it was because of LA traffic. After 2:30, you couldn't get out of there. And I use the city a lot. So it became the house that was up my live-in house that I was going to die with my husband in. It became a burden for me for different reasons. So again, a big reason people move is to reduce isolation. They find their friends aging. They can no longer drive at night anymore. Their friends are getting ill and all these other kinds of things. So now they find out, they go to their church or their synagogue. Everybody's a different generation. So they become more and more isolated. The book clubs end, the mahjong games end, all these other kinds, the neighborhood kinds of things that you had involved with children, they end. So a lot of people move because of social isolation. Again, financial considerations. One is the upkeep of a house, but more importantly, as you start needing care. And again, I know the costs of home care vary greatly from state to state, but it can become prohibitive. There's California, we have new wage and hour laws. So, well, they're not so new, but to give you an idea, to full-time care through an agency in California is between $35,000 and $40,000 a year. So even with long-term care insurance, it's prohibitive for most people. So, and there's all kinds of variations to that. So don't freak out with that, but that's a reality. Again, people move, and short-term needs. I know when I had an aging father-in-law, and our whole family was going to India for a month, and he was alone, so there was nobody really to monitor him. He went into an assisted living for the month that we were gone, so he was protected. People go into rehab when they have strokes, or they break hips, or all the other kind of reasons. You go in rehab, and it's really short term. So that's another reason. Again, there is balancing the needs. Excuse me, balancing the needs of the whole family. When there's a couple, sometimes statistically, people over 65, 50% of the caregivers will die before the person they're taking care of. And sometimes the stress is just too much. So the move is really not necessarily for the person that's ill, but it really is to protect the caregiver and to balance out who we're taking care of here. So again, level of care can exceed what you can do at home. It's expensive enough to have non-medical caregivers and family caregivers, but when you start needing more skilled level of care or two people to help lift people, sometimes you just can't do it at home anymore. The house is not set up, it's not modified for wheelchairs or those kind of things, and it just doesn't work out that way. Again, there's people with unmanageable behavior, and the caregivers keep quitting. The family members are burning out because of aggression. It might be because of wandering. Lots of behaviors that can't be managed in the home. And even the strongest of people, it just becomes dangerous and impossible. And then there is, I see a lot, and a lot of calls I get are self-neglect. People want to stay home. People want to age in place. And they go into denial. So they're not eating properly. They're not taking care of themselves, especially when people start having cognitive, they lack cognitive function and their judgment is not always good. So a lot of times there really is self-neglect. And then finally is there are people that are absolutely resistant to any care in the home. And there's no choice but to move them because they really are at a danger. So Ellie, do you want to change the slide? We got it. Yeah. Okay. So when, again, I was laughing because we have Nextdoor. You guys all know what that Nextdoor, it's a neighborhood app. And people will say, I have a 95-year-old mother, nothing about how she is or who she is or how much they can afford. Do you have a recommendation for placement for my mom? I'm moving her in town. And I will get these people inevitably to give one place that's the most expensive place that has limited care involved, and they don't know. So one size doesn't fit all. So you have to be very, very careful, number one, on the level of care that's needed, because an independent facility, and I know around the country there are beautiful ones, and there are ones in California as well. They're lovely, the 55 plus communities, and maybe they have some light assist. But if you're very frail and the priority is in taking care of you, it just doesn't make sense. So you have to know the level of care you're needed, and you must have objective assessments before anybody makes any kind of move. A lot of these places, they're anxious to get people in. They work on commissions to get people in. And you'll go in there and all of a sudden they'll upscale you with all kinds of care needs, or they can't take care of the care at all. So level of care is vital. Your values and preferences, everybody is different. Values are something you can't change. So if you value your family, then the most important priority is to be next to family. It may be that it's a much more expensive place than you live. You can't get as nice as the place, but it's more important to be near family than anything else. If your values are around religion and you want to be near your synagogue or your church, then values you don't change, preferences you can. So if there's a place with all red modern decor and another place is more traditional, you may like the more modern or more traditional. That's a preference. So understand your values, and you've got to, before you move, is think of you, not your next door neighbor, but what are your values? What can't be changed? What would make you miserable in order to, when you're making these decisions to move, and what would bring you joy? So very important to do that. Again, cost is a major factor. People don't understand that things can vary dramatically based on location, based on the facility, based on all kinds of things. The other part of that is people's relationship with money. Time and again, I worked at Jewish Family Service for many years, running their private care management program. And I get these daughters saying, oh, find the nicest place for my mom. Money is no object. Then I talked to mom and said, If she thinks I'm spending $10,000 on a place to live in, she's out of her mind. So it's not only affordability, but it's relationship with money. Some people are more frugal. They'd rather save their money. Other people are more extravagant and they are free to spend as they want to. So budgeting and all that is that's a major factor. Demographics, again, it can be based on anything from your cultural background to your religious background to your political background. I know based on my political beliefs, there's certain parts of the country I couldn't live in. I don't care how nice it is. And other people feel the same about their politics. Same thing is comfort, whether it's because of culture, because of religion, or all these other kinds of things. So really important to be mindful of the people the population that the placements serve. Again, and I've seen dreadful mistakes on this because people look at the bricks and mortar, it's pretty, they look at the location and they don't realize it's very different and they're social and they just can't relate to the people there. Again, the environment, some people are much more comfortable and they can afford a much more upscale environment. Some people are, and it has a lot to do with who goes in there, are much more comfortable in a more modest environment. So very important to think about. Staffing is essential to understand. And this is one of the mistakes that people make because some of these more independent living facilities have a very, very big ratio of staff to residents. So it could be as much as 9-to-1 to 12-to-1. Some of the smaller board and cares that we have in this community are two staff people to every 6 people. So very important to understand the ratio. And that becomes more important the more needs you have, the more physical needs, the more cognitive needs that you have. Doesn't matter. It's really seductive to look at these advertisements and see these beautiful places, but if they can't take care of you, it can be a disaster. Again, the needs of others. Some people, they find the most perfect place and that's all very nice, but it takes their children an hour to get there. And they don't really consider that. They don't consider if it's a couple, the woman may not consider after she passes, what's going to happen to her spouse if all the money that they have saved goes into her care. So considering the needs of others is vital. And quite honestly, I see families because some of these large, beautiful facilities are really pleasant for the families to visit. The grandkids can visit. They like being seen there. They like it. They enjoy the support groups there and all that. And maybe a small board and care might be better for mom. She'll do okay there, but really it's not as good for the whole family. The supports aren't taken in mind for everybody. So you have to consider both people. This illness is a family affair and it does not affect just the person that's ill. So I know that's hard because the person that's ill is suffering a lot or has a lot of challenges, but equally challenging are the adult children or the spouses or other people that they didn't cause it and now it's a consequence. Their life has changed as well. So it's really important to be mindful of those kind of things. And I do this because you see a lot of conflict that comes in, and a lot of that is around these kind of things is just focusing on the ill person. So it's hard when you're ill to be mindful of the others, and some go over the top and they're excessive the other way. They don't want to be a burden, but it's something to be very, very to take in mind. The other thing is activities, and that has a lot to do if you're social or not. Some people are very, very social and they need a lot of activities. Some people really don't like people and they're much more happy on computers or reading and all these kind of things. And the idea of having to sit at a dining room table and making small talk in the morning is abhorrent to them. Same with activities. Some people love them and are joiners. Some people just aren't. Same thing goes with support groups. There are people that love being around other people would only do this very privately on an individual basis. So we're all different. So you really have to take that into consideration. And finally, access to medical care and those kind of services that are needed. And it's vitally important. And I've seen people that I do a lot of pre-planning. So I see these people in their 70s that are pretty healthy, and they live in these kind of rural areas, and they loved it. They retired there, but now they're looking, generally something happens, somebody breaks a hip or gets diagnosed with an illness, and they're scared, and they're all of a sudden looking, is this going to take care of my needs? So for those of you, I know you're impacted by Parkinson's, it would be essential to make sure you have the medical care and the supports that you need to take care of your illness. Okay, let's change slides. Okay, so, and I apologize for this. I don't know how I did it double, but I apologize. There, at any rate, this is what I'm gonna be talking about in the remainder of most of the rest of the presentation, because I know this is what you asked for, the different kinds of facilities. I'm going to go very little into the 55 plus communities, but the independent living, the assisted living, the memory care, the continuing care, and the skilled nursing. And again, these are going to differ greatly from city to city and state to state. So please, I'm most familiar again with Los Angeles and California, but I do know a little bit about the rest of the country because of the nature of my profession. But a lot of you are going to tell me you're wrong, and I'd love to hear more about it, because I've seen some of these models that we just don't have here. So
Bunni, I'm going to interrupt you one second. We have a couple of questions, just real quick answers.
Right.
Somebody said, do the skills in the destination places help for the elderly also apply to Down syndrome? And are you talking about just the U.S. or Canada or anywhere? I'm assuming it's everywhere.
You know, for this, I'm most familiar with people over 65. And the senior, and I think licensing is 62 if I'm not in certain facilities. So, but I do know I've worked with the special needs population, but I don't know as much. But yes, they're just separate rules, separate reimbursement, all kinds of things that are different for, we have something called the Regional Center here for younger developmentally disabled children. They have a ton of services. I just don't, it's a whole separate conversation. So this is going to be for 55 and plus by the nature of this. And, you know, I know a little bit about countries because I get in England and the English speaking, Australia and Israel, and I had somebody from Spain. So I know a very little bit. I would not believe me. I mean, I would fact check me if I gave you, because it's usually through anecdotal kind of experience rather than really knowledge. So yeah.
Okay. And I assume you will be talking about how do you know when to move?
Yes, absolutely. Yes.
Okay.
Yeah.
All right. I'm sorry. Okay. That's it.
Okay, let's move on. That's the worst slide. I apologize. Okay, so I did not take, because I know time is limited, talk about the 55 plus communities that are basically, at least here, fairly independent, where people buy homes. We have a lot of them. We have very few in the LA area, but they're basically independent apartments that you have the advantage of, sometimes clubhouses. Somehow it's really for social reasons. They're great places to live, and they can have medical accommodations and whatnot, but they're independent. They're not licensed. And I'm going to be speaking mostly about the licensed kind of facilities. So there are 55 plus communities. People move, they tend to be younger. People move in their 50s and 60s into these after retirement. We have a lot in Palm Springs. I think the criteria is you have to play pickleball or canasta. golf, those kind of communities. I'm going to ignore those, and it's a whole separate conversation, because I want you to understand, for those of you that are looking forward in terms of having been diagnosed with a serious illness, knowing that you could live for 20, 25 years with this and having different challenges. I want to explain the difference. So I'm going to start with independent living facilities. And these are, they can look like in other cities, not here, but they can look like apartments in the same community. They can be hotel-like models, that is what mostly we have here, with some are buy-in, some are not. But they are unlicensed, and they really expect you to be independent. They market to people that are independent. They want to support that independent lifestyle with enhancing all those reasons why people move, because a house is a hassle, and all the it's a socialization model. And they can help. I mean, it can help with what we call those instrumental activities of daily living that become a burden: the making meals, the housekeeping, the laundry, the activities are on site, maybe the transportation to get places, but these are all based on being fairly independent. So these are not, and I'll go into a little more the continuing care, but these are strictly for independent people. They're not licensed, so they don't, they have criteria when you move in. It can be problematic. What ends up happening for a lot of these places is when people start needing care, they hire privately. Some have on-site home care agencies there, which gives you advantage that maybe you need just somebody to watch your medications or help you with the bath or something like that. You can still do it and remain in place. So but they are for independent people. They're great for people. They're a great option depending on where you live, for people that like to socialize. I know a lot of these people, and it really has to do with what I mentioned before, that motivation. They can no longer drive at night. They have a lot of friends. They're losing friends. Their kids, friends are moving to be with their family members. They're becoming ill themselves. They're becoming homebound. Neighbors are moving away, so they can enjoy socialization here. There's every kind of socialization imaginable. Some of them you see activity sheets every day. There's a calendar, so it could be anything from movies to lectures to field trips to celebrating holidays to cocktail hours to bingo to mahjong to bridge to lessons in those things. So they will vary greatly, and these are some of the things that I know greatly vary based on cost, the aesthetics of them, the location, and where you live. So keep that in mind. But they really, it's for people that just want to make their life easier. It's not a bad thing to do. It's kind of nice. You want for that active senior that maybe is even still working or wants to volunteer and doesn't want to be bothered. Maybe they're, a lot of people, once they lose a spouse, particularly for, it seems like a lot of men that lose their wife, that they don't get married in 3 months. They're not used to, and this is traditional, but they're not used to keeping a house up. They're not used to having to cook and have somebody be their social director and those kind of things. So a lot of this takes place when there's change. When I talk about continuing care, I have a feeling about that. And when Sharon talked about timing, it's everything. My experience with this, and I'll mention it again, is the earlier you do these things, the better, because change is hard for everybody. It's stressful. And having the stress of having to move because you've just lost your spouse and having to deal with the bereavement involved in that, and perhaps physical changes of your own, is difficult. And so if you move as a couple, that becomes your home. And if one passes or gets very, very sick, you have your social supports built in already. It's much more difficult when you do it as a crisis. And this is, hopefully you can avoid crises, but it really is something to consider. When you look at these independent models for people that are moving to be there, their children or their grandchildren, they make a life of their own there. Same thing for the 55+ communities. I have a friend that moved to Atlanta because her only daughter and son-in-law and grandson lived. They were, you know, when the motion picture industry changed in California and a lot of it went to Georgia, they moved to Georgia, and she moved into one of these facilities. She bought a house, so it was a 55 plus community, and she had such a big social life. She immediately made friends. They were really nice to her. She had been widowed, and she barely saw her kids. She saw them once on the weekend. So very different than when you're ill and you're depending on children, and hard to make new friends when you're not feeling good and all that other stuff. So that's just a comment, and I'll mention it. Okay, let's move on to the next slide. Okay, so assisted living, these are licensed. And again, I don't know the licensing in every state. I only know California. And they are licensed facilities. Here they are generally more of a hotel model. Again, there are other communities even out of central the part of the area of Los Angeles that I live, that you can live in an apartment, but it's assisted living. So they can be anything from helping with the basics. And usually it starts when people need a little bit of assistance. It might be managing their medications and being there because they're a fall risk when they're bathing and showering. It can go anywhere to what we call these all the things that an assisted living offers, and then it's plus. So it can be what we call, I'm sure you're familiar, or most of you are familiar with, activities of daily living, the things that you need, the personal care needs you need to be able to be safe and taken care of. So those are the kinds of things that the med management is one: bathing, dressing, hygiene, transferring, getting up from ambulating, getting up from a bed and then having somebody walk you, showering, hygiene, dressing. Those are all activities of daily living, and assisted livings. Those are what takes care of you. There are many different models of payment for that. And one model is just it's cafeteria style. You just pay what you get. You pay what you need. So if you only need medication management, you'll be paying for a monthly fee to get that managed. If you need bathing, you'll pay for that. If you need incontinence, you'll pay for the supplies, but you'll pay for somebody to change your diapers. If you need more supervision, that starts being, and that becomes problematic. And I'll talk a little bit more of that, because these are not 24-hour supervision. The ratio of staff, when I talked at the beginning of ratio of staff, it's essential to know that. And one of the problems that I see, people get enamored by the beauty of the building and the fun activities, and they forget that it may be a 1 in 12 ratio or a 1 in 10 ratio. That's one staff member to every 10 people, versus, and I'll talk about these board and cares with the next slide, of a 2 to 6 ratio. So it's almost personal care. So some of it, again, is there's levels of care you pay based on level 1, 2, and 3, which is light assist, medium assist, and full assist. And the prices will vary greatly. There are some situations in this, and I will talk at the end more about it, when you're signing to a contract, is understand, because there are some people, particularly with behavior management and fall risks, that the assisted living will say, sorry, in order to stay here, you're going to have 24-hour care. So
what about a spouse? Can you bring your husband or wife into
yeah, some of them you can. Again, these we'll talk about continuing care. Assisted living, it doesn't make sense, and most of the models now are something called continuing care. They're not just assisted, so they can they're much more suitable to a spouse and somebody that needs more care. But the assisted living is strictly assisted. And depending on the spouse, if the spouse, all he or she does is want to be around their spouse, they don't care that the activities may not be as energetic as they need. Maybe they're working full time and goes out. You look at cost, you look at the value of it, but you'd go more into the continuing care facilities. But yeah. So again, these are licensed, and the licensing varies of some of them, you can't be in wheelchairs to be on there. You can't use guardrails because of fire. If there's a fire, you couldn't get out. So there's all kinds. You have to find out in your state what the licensing is. Very important. So, okay, let's go to the next one. Oh, okay. Before I do that, memory care is also considered assisted living, but these are specifically for people that have cognitive issues, or that they have lack of cognitive function, and for many of these, it's 65% of that is Alzheimer's, but certainly people with Parkinson's are challenged, and people with strokes and Korsakoff from Alzheimer's, from alcohol and all kinds of other dementias. But these are specialty, they are licensed specialty. They have certain amount of training criteria. These memory units are locked because there's a lot of people that wander. Much more extensive care, much more training, and doing activities that are based on maintaining cognitive function. For many of these people, they need the physical care as all. So when it comes to cost, they tend to be, because of all the licensing and the kind of staff training and things and the ratios needed, they tend to be more expensive than the regular units. They tend to be in very high demand, so they're not available. And when we talk about continuing care, you may have one spouse that needs memory care and one is in the independent care. A lot of time the memory care may or may not be available. So again, when you go into a facility and you know there are cognitive issues, now it's fine, there's mild cognitive impairment, but it's a progressive in nature. Make sure the availability of these kinds of things, or be prepared maybe to move when your needs change for that. So memory care are again, there are some models, and there's one company in our area, it used to be two, that have a second level that are again, they're licensed. So you can be diagnosed with early stage dementias. You can be independent, you're not going to wander, but you really need assistance with short-term memory issues and managing meds, but also being reminded to go to activities and all those kind of things. They call it Circle of Friends, and one's called the PALS unit, and they're assisted living plus. So there's people that are monitoring also for memories, because it can be really hard on regular independent units, or even assisted living, when people are fairly independent and they start kicking people out of their bridge games or their mahjong games, and they can't keep up with things and they can't follow the activities. They need more specialized activities, or they need support doing it. So most of it's these locked memory units, but again, there are these intermediate units, and you have to look in your community, and I'll tell you how to find these things later of when they're available, just needing a little support. And again, when people have mild cognitive impairment, you just have to be careful what the doctor writes on these reports, that it's not early stage. You have to find out you have to find out in your community the criteria for being in regular assisted living, so you can get in and just get the support you need. It may be fine, because most people like the least restrictive environment. And you're not, people with mild cognitive impairment, there are so many people, they're not diagnosed and they still work and they're still engaged, and they just need some other kinds of supports. A memory unit is not for them. That is for people with moderate to severe dementia, or have behavioral or problems with wandering and those kind of things, safety issues, and really need extensive needs. So you have to check again your community. And the memory units can be wonderful for people that in that moderate stage of dementia that are still social beings and love to be engaged. They just need to be in the right environment, which can support them. it's almost like being in special education for children that, a child with autism, say that in the classroom, it can be a disaster, but in these classes, they can just thrive and do whatever they want. So, got to be mindful of these things. And you don't want, you have to be careful how much you say, but you have to you really have to know the right questions to ask. So the person, it's not just they accept you in there, but you're comfortable in the facility. So these are the assisted living. And again, these are what people move into, when they no longer can take care of themselves at home, when they have some problems with some of the activities of daily living. So I would be careful, and most truly in Los Angeles, where when I started, and it was in 93, I started working with the elderly. There were several of these facilities because it's less expensive for the owners to run these independent facilities because they're not licensed, they don't have staffing issues and all those kind of things. But now almost all of them are also licensed to be assisted living because you age in place. Nobody wants to move when you have your friends and you have activities, you like your residents, you like the location, you like the doctors, all that kind of stuff. So be mindful where you are and how adaptable to change you are and all those other kinds of things. Okay, let's move on to the next one. Okay, yeah. So a slight mention of these, and these are I worked at a company that for 20 years, and it's true, most people like to age in place. That's just the reality. But sometimes it becomes impossible. It becomes so expensive that it's not, or it becomes so difficult to manage. So, but they need the full-time care. They're a fall risk, they're incontinent, they maybe dementia, these little 6-bed homes, and they have more. It's a model for the mentally ill and for developmentally delayed and all those other populations that we know about that need supportive housing. They're licensed for 6 people. They're a license under that auspices of assisted livings, but they're for 6 people. And the difference between these is they're in residential areas. They're, all over the place, depending on the areas, but they're also, the staffing is different. They're generally two staff members to every 6 people. So it's almost like a one-on-one relationship. If you're a fall risk or you're bedbound, it tends to be, so this tends to be a very cost-effective way of when you can't afford $35,000, $40,000 a year, or you're hiring people independently and they keep leaving, and the daughter keeps having to fly in from out of town, or the kids are overburdened, or the spouse is overburdened. These are a really cost-effective and in much way healthier option. And particularly people that are living alone in this condition, there's protections there. So these board and care, I know, at least when I was looking, and this was several years ago, in New Jersey, they didn't have them. They weren't licensed for them. So you have to check your state. They're great. And again, I've had many people, spouses that they're just exhausted because they're not sleeping at night and they're miserable, and it's got to end. They have care, but it's so you get one of these places right near your house. You can go there for spouses that are devoted. You can visit every day, but you can go home and sleep, and the other person is protected at night. So it's a great model. Again, it's an expensive model because they're homes, and again, it depends on the price of real estate where you are. So in my area, there's very, very few new ones because the cost of real estate has probably gone up tenfold since I started working in this area. So, they're expensive, and they've become more expensive, but they're certainly much less than having 24-hour care in the home. So that's a board and care. Okay, let's move on. Okay, so continuing care facilities. These are the facilities that combine those independent living, assisted living, memory care, and not so common where I live, but there are some, and more common probably in other places, also nursing home care. So the advantage of these, to Sharon's question, is there's many couples that move in where one needs assistance. They may need just light assist, or they may need memory care, or a lot of care, but they can both be in the same place. So these companies, we have some very high-end ones here, and they market to independent people. And interesting enough, there's one that's very close to me that opened within the last 3 years. And everybody is active and engaged, and it's close to UCLA, so they're all well-known medical people and professors and all kinds of professionals. They move in from upscale areas and they're paying a lot of money. The average age, and I was shocked, of the people that moved in is 88. And they're all so, but they're all the majority, they're independent. They do provide assistance, and they do have a memory care unit. The memory care unit is awful. It's small and it's depressing and it's awful, and people don't look. So at that point, you can, and it depends on the situation, you just have to be aware. So if you know there's an illness that's progressing quickly and you're going to need a lot more care, it is really imperative that you find out at the beginning. It's a difference when you're paying for when you're paying for independent living, it may be half the amount that you're paying when it's memory care or level 3 care. You know, they have these different levels of assistance you need. So these are the continuing care. They come in all size, shapes, and packages. They all look different. I know around the country they look different. Again, we tend to have more the hotel looking model. Some look like the Four Seasons Hotel. Some people like more look like a Motel 6, so they can vary greatly. Some are in very upscale areas, some in more middle or lower class areas. So it's going to make all the difference, again, in the population that's there, and the cost, and the ambiance, and on and on and on, and the level of care. So no, these are great models for people, particularly couples that have 2 different levels of care that they want to be together. And some people share a room, you know, and other people get 2 rooms and use one as first of all, they just want to be in separate rooms, or they want a separate room, and these can be in 1 rooms, and the majority here, because of costs, are 1 rooms, but there's 1 bedrooms and there's 2 bedrooms. So they can be a small apartments. Many of them have kitchenettes in there, although there's always meal plans on these, but some people like to eat breakfast in their room. Some will vary. Some it's mandatory to pay for meals. Most of them here, some wouldn't be. So you have to check on, you know, a lot of this you've got to understand before you go into any of these places, is to understand your budget, understand the potential needs you have, understand your specifics of what's important to you, and then make sure it's clarified, and just not deal on emotion. You go, oh my gosh, this one behind the sign here, this is in the Pacific Palisades area of Los Angeles, and it looks like a country club. But on the other hand, it's pretty socially, it's pretty geographically isolated. So if you want to be there and just enjoy that kind of living, it's great. But if you have kids that live on the other side of town and it's an hour and a half in traffic to get there, you have to prioritize. So that's these are all in Los Angeles area. You can see this is just it's on a busy street in Los Angeles. It's a nice place, but it looks more like a hotel, and it's much smaller. And again, some have pools, some have pickleball courts, some have, you know, beautiful patios, and some are really more urban and just have the facility. So it really depends. This is not a beach. This is a street. I don't know what this came in, but yeah, Sharon, this is near where you live, the Sunrise Beverly Hills, just in case you want to.
Yeah.
It is continuing care. So
yeah.
Anyways, that's continuing care. Let's move on, because we only have 10 minutes and I have a lot to go to. So the continuing care retired communities, and I'll just briefly talk about these, but these are the ones you buy in. And I'm only briefly talking about them because we have so few in the area I live in, and other parts of the country, they are really popular, and they are a wonderful option because you can move in, you stay in place, you pay a set fee, you have a buy-in fee, and that can be anywhere, you know, it depending again on the location and what you're getting, they can be anywhere from, you know, $300,000-$400,000 to upwards into $1 million, $2 million.
Right.
Yeah, just tripped over my
No,
feet.
okay.
You generally, again, these are buy-ins, so you have to be very, very careful that you want to stay in there. It used to be when upon your death or when you moved, you got 90% back, at least around here. Now it's down to 75%. So these places make the money on they're holding your money. Plus you have a monthly fee that pays for meals. They pay for, it's kind of like homeowner fees and all those other kinds of things. So the cost is one thing, but there are nonprofits, church-based organizations that run these around the country. And people, you know, when I hear about them because their parents live in places like Minnesota and Illinois and Arizona and place like that, and they're thinking about moving them here. And I said, well, for what you're paying over there, you're going to have a, you know, 1-bedroom studio here. So be mindful of that. They're wonderful options. The other thing you have to be mindful, because this is, people are selling, generally people sell their house and use the money, the proceeds to buy these. This is a huge amount of money. So some of these places, these private places have gone bankrupt, and that can be problematic. In Los Angeles, the new scandal is the Jewish Home for the Aging had a very, very upscale place. It's this one, it's the one, it's on the left-hand side here. It looks like a Four Seasons hotel. Buying is between $1 million and $1.6 million. And they serve kosher meats, and it's a Jewish environment. And there's a waiting list involved. About 6 months or within the last year, the residents got a notification. The Jewish Home decided this is not going with their mission of serving the underserved. I don't know what the reasons are, but they sold it to a private corporation that is not Jewish. Nothing in their contract says the food has to be kosher. And it's now, there's a 6-month waiting list, so they don't know what's going on. But here's people that they were moving for a specific reason, to be, you know, I'm guessing for many of them being comfortable in the community they're in, and maybe they follow the Jewish holidays and keep kosher and all this, and the rules changed with them. So these are people, again, by the time people get into these, they're 85, 90 years old to start moving. The money is, you know, again, you lose to 25% of your original principal on these things. So it can happen. So just be aware that, okay, let's move on from that. Then there's the skilled nursing, and these are what they call nursing homes. And there's many different reasons why we use these nursing homes. And one of them that people are probably most familiar with is you require nursing home skill or skilled care after you're discharged from the hospital for rehabilitation. And these are short-term and often covered if you've been in the hospital for 72 hours and it's required by Medicare. The other place, 80%, oh gosh, I think it's 80% nationwide of people in nursing homes, it's the safety net for the indigent. So when people run out of money, they go into nursing homes. Nursing homes, they're required to have skilled care and that, but what they don't have, because of funding and all kinds of things, is it's a 1-to-9 ratio, and that's when the staff shows up of staff to residents. So if you have dementia or something like that and really need to be watched, it can be really problematic. Again, in many of your communities, they might be lovely. That is not true in Los Angeles. It's just not. The system isn't working. It's a medical model. There's generally 2 beds to a room, and there's a nursing station down the hall. So it's like being in a hospital with less care. So it can be, again, I've been in other facilities that are beautiful and but they're just not. So really important to know what the fallback is, because many people that would qualify now choose not to be in nursing homes. They'll move into these assisted living, board and cares or whatever, and choose to opt out of the nursing home. So when people, you have to look at what's there. You have to look at all these criteria I talked about before in terms of staffing, what your needs are, how private you are, how important the ambience is, what the activities are. You look on Medicare.gov, you will, that's everybody, you will see the complaints that have been registered. The one thing for any of you, and again, I'm talking Los Angeles, so I can't talk for the rest of the country, but I'm assuming it's pretty much the same because there's a financial incentives to all of these things. If you are on an HMO, you don't get to choose. You only can go to the nursing homes post-hospitalization for those that are on your plan, and they're not picking the Cadillac ones on their plan, and it's changed dramatically. Kaiser in Los Angeles used to have, and a lot of people are on Kaiser and love Kaiser for many reasons. They used to be able, when they had to go to nursing homes, it was fine. They weren't the A ones, but they were B ones, and they have family supports, and they were able to advocate, and they take care, you can take care of business and make it work. Well, in the last couple of years, maybe post-COVID, it's changed dramatically, and the choices are so much less. So any of you that are looking at HMO plans out there, I know Medicare is open season. Check if you know that you're living alone, or you probably would go into rehab, and the chance of you having to have rehab and be in these facilities for a long time, make sure you understand what you're getting in there. So not going to say too much more. And again, they vary from state to state. Eligibility also varies from state to state on these. California, the bad news about California is we pay a lot of taxes. The good news is we put a lot of resources into the underserved. So there are people, the eligibility entitlement programs for this are much more liberal in California than in other places. So you got to check where you live and what's in there. It's all by state. The money comes from the federal government, but it's managed by the state. So really the biggest thing and the biggest theme I hope I get is prepare ahead and understand what you need and set realistic expectations for that. Okay, let's go on because we have about 2 minutes, and the financial realities are big on these kind of things. So again, how do you pay for this? One is the personal funds that people have, and they use their income, they use their savings, their investments, their Social Security, their pensions, their annuities, and any other income. Some people are paid for by family, support them and help them with that. Just a second, I can't read my slides, so there's long-term, there's certain life insurance policies that you can sell, even if they're term life, and use the money, and there's certain ones that pay for long-term care. So you have to check that. Again, there are entitlement programs. In California, they changed the law now that it's not, it used to be you could only have $2,000 or $3,000 as a couple in savings. Now it's unlimited. It's income based. So if you're low income, you can be eligible for long-term Medi-Cal, we call it, to go into these nursing homes. And the other one, there's a VA program for any of you that were veterans that are not even necessarily low income, but moderate income. They will give you money not only for care at home, but also assisted living, so that you can get a chunk of money. Look at the VA. It's called the Aid and Attendant Program there. That's through the VA. And then I mentioned Medi-Cal programs, and depending on the state you're in, they're more or less lenient. So really important to know. So before you do these things, check with your financial advisors to see what you can afford. Again, decide your priority in terms of your legacy and your trust in estate. If it's something you have other people in your family that you want to take care of, if that's a priority, or you figured you've taken care of your kids forever, it's enjoy it and do the nicest place you can get and enjoy life how you can. So deal with family conflicts. I do this mediation with family because this comes up. There's people on both sides, not only for finances. If some say, well, you know, mom can go on Medi-Cal and be in a nursing home. Another one saying she could pay for full-time care and be home. That's what she worked for. And they have different needs. The other needs is there's some people that, and it's generally older adults that want to be as independent as possible and have as much autonomy as possible. And for many of them, their children want them as safe as possible. And that can be a huge, huge conflicts that come up and get in the way of moving forward. And then again, there's spousal issues. And, you know, because of the nature of what I do, I see a lot of it you got spouses, and some of them are just narcissists, and it's all about them. And other ones are wonderful, but they're jeopardizing their own health, taking care of their spouse, and there's no, it puts them in harm's way. So you have to look at all these spousal issues. And this is, you know, half of what I do is the kids and the concern because of spouses that are different. Let's go on to the next one. So who can help you with this? When you're getting them, it always is nice to get some personal recommendations and see if but just be aware that everybody's different. But, you know, if there's places in your community that you're thinking about and you know people that have been there, by all means, those recommendations are priceless. They're wonderful. The other is there are placement agencies, and there are placement professionals. And these are people, I warn you, the way they work like a real estate agent. So you don't pay them. There's no charge for their services. But when you move into a facility, the facility gives them a certain percentage of the first month's rent, or I don't know how they work. They have different contracts with them. I warn you, there are people that are independent, and those are people. Ask for recommendations. Again, go back to your personal recommendations. If somebody's used somebody, the ones that are in the community, the independent ones, tend to have relationships with the people there. They will personalize it for you. They can tell you if you can get deals and waive the community fees or get discounts on the room or all these other kinds of things. They can tell you more about the population, staffing, the turnaround, and all that. And there's online, A Place for Mom being the biggest one. Be very careful. They're not in the community, so they're very good for somebody that wants a list of everything, and some people do that. They're very efficient, but again, they get paid by first one in. So if you go to one of these online companies and they give you 30 places, then you go to your independent one and she tells you the 3 that works, she cannot get her placement fee on that. The online, you're doing that. So automatically, I tend to go to Google for everything. Find out first who's in your community. They're terrific. Geriatric care managers, aging life care managers, that's for anybody that's alone. These are people with nursing, social work, multidisciplinary background that specialize in aging. And we're the folks that know 8 different areas of expertise between the family and the placement and the entitlement programs and home care and function and all these kind of things. They can assess the situation and make recommendations based on all the things that I was talking about. So when I do my work, I supervise for 30 years care management programs and developed and all that. These are the people I use for the assessment. I personally use the placement people too. When I'm giving people recommendations, I have favorites in the community because it costs money for somebody like me or a care management. You're paying them by the hour. And the placement people are doing it for free. And they're quite honestly, the good ones know much more about placement because they're doing it all the time. So care managers are a godsend for a lot of reasons when adult children are overburdened or people are alone or all that. The other part is, particularly for low income communities, because of the Older Americans Acts, every councilmanic district in this country has a designated senior center. Some are better, some are worse, but it's a great place to start for anybody just to find out the services that they provide, and they will help. They have case managers. So they have this, not like the private, they're not on call, they're not as personalized, but they can come out, they can assess, they can give you recommendations in the communities, they can help with Medi-Cal or Medicaid applications, they can do all that. So senior center, not all great, some are subsidized by other, they get other monies, some are just terrific, some aren't so great, but great thing to know about for anybody. I'm going to give you one more thing, and then we're going to start there. For anybody, and a lot of people, money is an issue. If you want to know about any public services in your local community and the link for them, go into, there's a website called Benefits, BENEFITS, checkup.org. It's through the National Council of Aging, and you can fill in all your information and you will find your senior center. You can find where the meals are. You can see if you're eligible for the VA. You can see about free programs. I always like to plug that because it's a great one. If you come out with anything, a great kind of thing. Okay, we're gonna, I think our time is out. So we have really, I can't emphasize the planning, same two people, one can be a terrible experience and one can be a wonderful experience, but you got to understand. So the first step is to understand, really assess the situation. There are online assessments, there are folks like care managers, there are folks like case managers, there are all your medical professionals. Understand the situation, set your own goals. We're all different. Look at the options, then you implement it. The more time you have, the better you can, again, the majority of what I do, because people call them 3 years later, they're calling in a crisis. Start early so you're not stuck in a crisis. Outcomes are just much better when you're able to plan ahead. And then you reevaluate because things change. And just when you think you have everything, as we all know, something is dropped and the world changed. So I'm going to end with that because I think we're over time already. I am available if you need me for any additional questions.
Okay. Thank you, Bunny. Yeah, we'll stay on as long as we need to for questions and answers. Let's just finish up my slides real quick and then we'll go on to Q&A. So we don't have a whole lot. Our next meeting is November 10th. Robert Cochran will be joining us again. He has a new book called Acceptance. He will be talking about that. He will be talking about his cinema therapy workshop and improv for Parkinson's. So he's got a lot he's going to be covering. Next slide. I have been sending a survey out to people who have been diagnosed for more than 10 years. It is not something that is going to be financed by the NIH. It is really informal, but I just want to see how many of us are doing after 10, 15, I've been 15 years and I'm still, I'm still here. I'm doing almost everything I did 15 years ago. I want to find out why we think as people with Parkinson's, we are doing well. Those of us who are doing well. So let me know if you're interested and I will send you the survey. Next one. We have our peer support program for women. If you are newly diagnosed or relatively newly diagnosed and feel you need someone to talk to who can answer your questions, help put your team together, you can apply as a mentee, or if you want to help somebody, you've been around for a while, you can apply to be a mentor. So just go to our peer support program on my website if you're interested. And next slide. We have 2 discussion groups. One is for everybody on Tuesday mornings with Shelley and Darlene. And on Sunday mornings, before our regular meetings, we have a Parties Without Partners. So that's for the single ladies who want to be just get together and talk on Sunday mornings for an hour. And I think that is it. So let's turn off the slides, get everybody back up. And if you have a question, I think we covered most of the questions that were in the chat. I'm going to look at that. In the meantime, anybody have something, just start talking. You can unmute yourself and ask your question.
How do we find Bunny?
Oh, I guess I can put it in the chat room. Can I do that?
Yeah, sure.
Of course, it just went away. Oh, there it is. Okay.
Oh, and I have a question for you, Bunny.
Sure.
What about the daycare centers?
Daycare centers, most of there are daycare centers, you know, again, every community is going to be different. They're primarily for either the adult day health centers are reimbursed by Medi-Cal, and therefore people to keep them out of nursing homes. So they have physical therapists, occupational therapists, and all those kind of things. They're wonderful. They're a great way of socializing and releasing the burden for families and again, taking care of needs and keeping people away from facilities. The ones I'm most familiar, and I actually sat on the board for 20 years, and is for adult day care for people with memory loss, and they can be anything from moderate to severe memory loss, and they're amazing. It's like summer camp for older adults, and again, they do yoga, they do current events, they do dancing, they're all kinds of activities. So they're in all communities. You have to look in your local communities to find those.
So that's for those of us who are not quite ready to move out.
Yeah,
Out of our house.
yeah.
Okay.
Oh, yeah, they keep people at home. It makes a difference. You're not burning out it's less expensive than caregivers, and it's also more stimulating, and some of them are online now too.
Okay. What was the benefits website again?
Benefitscheckup.org. If the easiest way is go into ncoa.org, and you'll see benefits checkup there. That's Natural Counsel.
All right, any questions from those of you who are still on? Anybody? Peggy, I know you have some questions. Unmute yourself.
It sounds like from what you said, you kind of like the long-term care, the continuing care for people with Parkinson's.
It really depends. You know, if somebody is very, very frail and is alone, maybe staff ratio is more important. Somebody's with a couple, or somebody with Parkinson's that you know it's going to be progressive. It seems to be, at least in an assisted living, assisted living or continuing care. I had mentioned if it's two people with different needs, but being an assisted living, so you can get a little or a lot, no extra assistance, or some or a lot. So
Right.
really important to put down what you need and what your future is, and then make sure it lines up.
Do care managers usually work 24/7? Like if there's an emergency and you have to go to the hospital,
Yeah.
they will be an advocate there? They do.
Oh, yeah. Yeah, this profession started in the late 80s by a lot of retired social workers, or not retired, social workers that said, getting more and more calls, kids were out of town and people were alone, and they had the resources, but nobody to help them. And so they act like daughters with the objectivity and the knowledge and the experience, so it's great. They're great for.
How do you find out the licensed ones? I think there's some initials.
Okay. If you go into aginglifecare.org, I'll put it in and it says find an expert, and you look in your zip code, and there is different levels. There's advanced professionals. They're all, again, people have different backgrounds. They may be in social work, they may be in nursing, a couple lawyers, occupational therapists. So you look at the backgrounds, but you also look, there are certified ones that are advanced professionals. The ones that are simply nurses or social workers, they're going to be professionals. You have to have 2 years. There's criteria and a test and thing to be certified. So you can look in there.
So it's Aging Life Care.
Okay. Call me if you need it. I know, I've been involved in the National Association, so I have contacts all over the country. So especially the big cities.
Barbara put a website for care facility search to look up license and reports and things. She put that in the chat. This one is for California. I assume every state has something equivalent.
Okay. I have a question.
Is that Let me look and see what you,
It's care facility search
oh, okay.
from California.gov.
And again, the quality of these things, the staffing, the management is so different. Unfortunately, what's been going on now and probably all over is a lot of big companies are buying out all these mom and pops out that were so personalized, and they're changing the nature of what they are, some for better, some not so much.
I have a question. I have a question.
Yes.
Trish, go ahead.
Okay, I just want to know if you, where would I go to look for like lists of places there, the little 6 unit ones, board and care?
Those, the placement professionals, those are under assisted living. So they do independent and assisted and continuing in memory care. So if you find a placement professional in your community, they should be able to help you.
Okay, thank you so much.
And then ask around too. Get personal. Ask you if you go, there are only 6. Ask if you can talk to, a family member or something when you're in there, and I'll tell you more than you need to know. It really helps to, like anything else, it helps to screen them, and things can change from year to year.
Yeah, thank you.
And I'm going to put all of these things that are in the chat, I will put in the email tomorrow that goes out with the video. Okay. So
Okay,
you'll have all these places to go to. More questions?
I have a question.
Yeah.
With the growing number of Parkinson's people that are out there, it seems like I was just at the consortium in Roseville, the number of people that were there. Are there beginning to be some facilities that specialize in Parkinson's that have more Parkinson's type people that are set up for that? Do you know of anything like that?
I don't, I think it varies from location to location. I know, we had a challenge with people with MS because they tend to be younger and have special needs. And there were a couple for a while that were really good because we could find places, they were in their 40s and had physical challenges but Parkinson's, to my understanding, it is so common, and there are people that are really pretty independent with it, and then down the food chain that you get the professionals, the physical therapists, the physicians. There's several centers in Los Angeles of excellent, and I would start there in your community. With the Parkinson's, Sharon probably knows much more than me on this. Where you would check and who would have the knowledge. Support groups are great, community support groups. I did them with parents with kids with special needs years ago. They knew more than anybody in terms of resources. So ask around, ask your communities.
Thank you.
Check with your local Parkinson's group if you have one.
Yeah.
Often they know if there's a Parkinson's organization in your city, they often have places they can refer you to.
Yeah, ours isn't big enough. We're in Auburn, California, so we're up in the foothills, and there's not a lot of facilities up here.
But maybe if you don't mind moving someplace, a little more urban might.
Yeah, that's a decision I think that has to be made, because then you move away from your family.
Yeah, and that's what I said. It really is important to know your priorities.
Yeah.
Shirley, I noticed there were a number of Del Webb type communities in Roseville when I was there last weekend. So
what?
that would be the Del Webb community, senior communities, 55 plus.
I can't hear that. Let me turn that volume. Go ahead.
Okay. In Roseville, I saw a number of 55 plus communities. Where there's single, 1-story homes. And they have all the activities and things going on. That was the first type of care Bunny talked about.
Right.
That may be where a good place to start.
Okay. Thank you.
Sharon, I think there was a question regarding caregiver fees, and this is something that that there is a shortage of caregivers in this country, tremendous shortage. What caregivers get paid, to some extent, it's the market. So if you're looking in Los Angeles and if anybody's from New York or any of the major cities, I'm sure it's the same. The minimum that independent caregivers are paid is $20 to $30 an hour. And the agencies are forced to pay pretty much $20 an hour for our minimum wage has gone up to, I think, $16 an hour. In Indiana, where my daughter-in-law's mother lives, and she has an aunt with a stroke, her grandmother lives there, minimum wage is $7.75 an hour. So for any of you that is considering full-time care, and you can contact me on that, there is a model, and if you're in one of the high minimum wage states like California, it's exorbitant, you know, for full-time care. There's a model of traveling nurses, and you pay them based on minimum wage. So instead of getting the 20-25 of our independent people, they're all screened and vetted. You hire them through Zoom, and they live with you, and you pay them minimum wage. So you're paying $16 to $24 an hour because for live-in people, and they live there, and it's and I don't want to go into details, but there are creative ways of doing this because it is so expensive. And then, of course, there are many people that aren't that are illegal, and they're charging less. And then you have the issues with liability and all that. And people use their cleaning ladies and all kinds of things. But if you're hiring, you know, doing it legitimately, even doing it independently, it's not as expensive. You're not paying $35 to $40 an hour for caregivers, but you are paying, you know, up to $30, $25, $30 an hour plus their employment benefits. It's crazy. It's crazy out there. It's a crisis. I think people are going to go back to living with their families, which they did a couple generations ago, because it's just become, and the facilities are more expensive. You know, they've doubled in rates in the last many years that I've been doing this. So,
yeah, I know when my mom had a stroke, this was 10 years ago, 15 years ago, she was totally incapacitated. She had to be in a nursing home. We didn't have a choice. Well, actually, we had her at home for 4 years, and then when they couldn't handle her one-on-one, then we had to move her. But we had first rotating, you know, 8-hour shifts, and then we had somebody there full time, and it's a nightmare just keeping the staff.
Yeah, and you know, it's complicated, but there is, you know, unfortunately, nobody has an immigration plan to get I look at, you know, to get these people here legally, so we have the pool, because there's just a shortage, and it's hard work. You know, it's really, you know, and there are, you know, again, there are a lot of options for these people. So and you know, anyways, it's a crisis in the places. The good news about, so these board and cares that used to, if you had somebody awake at night, they'd have one person there sleeping. But now, because they used to be able to pay 24-hour shifts, and that's till the laws changed about 10 years ago, where you had to pay overtime after 8 hours. So now they have to hire separate shifts in their waking hours. So those folks, maybe they only have one at night, but they're awake all night. So they're not just sleeping and they're in an emergency, but they can be there for preventive things and moving people and checking for bed sores and turning and all the other kinds of things that need to be done. So that is there. So anyways, there are models. You know, the more information and understanding you have, obviously you're in this, you're the minority because you're on this call and you're interested in learning, but learn as much as you can from as many people so you can make good decisions, because there are way of budgeting this kind of stuff and looking and using family in ways that you know, that is beneficial and all that kind of stuff. So
thank you. You know, you're better off doing it this way. Because you have Parkinson's, you have time to do the research to find the right place, instead of in an emergency, like with my mom when she had a stroke and we had to place her immediately. You know, we had to find care for her immediately. We didn't know what to do. So take advantage of the fact that you have time to find what's right for you, and ask questions. Get in touch with me, get in touch with Bunny. We can help you get to the right person, right agency, and I think that anything else, otherwise I think we're gonna call it now. It's 11:26. We've been, we've gone